Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry. Let me. So this is example study creation. Okay. We're going to walk you through a little bit of a exercise where you're going to see the mechanism by which we can define a study, but then we'll talk about some of the features of that and the sort of the motivations for using for making different settings there, particularly for the data streams. Yeah, what's up? Yeah. Sure. So you want to speak up? Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah, that's.
Is it fine?
That's good. Yep. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to navigate to the Ethica site, and if you log into Ethica data, so again, to get to there, just as a reminder, we'll do ethicadata.com/board, okay, and we'll bring you. Now, for some of you who selected earlier password when you logged in earlier, you'll be logged in immediately and you'll see this. Others of you may have to re-enter your username and password to get into it.
They see this screen, not that one.
Okay, they see this one here. I'm doing a recording on both just in case. Okay, do you folks see this? Okay. Anyone want a bit more time? Okay. So what we'd like to do is to expose you to the basics of creating a new study, and then on the basis of that, confronting you with some of the choices that have to be made, and then we're going to spend some time going through the implications of some of those choices, so that you can today create a study for yourself with reasonable choices for many of the features, particularly in the form of these so-called data streams, things like accelerometer data, audio data, data related to GPS, etc. Okay? We want to be able to make an informed decision, and we're not going to be able to cover everything about data streams, but we want to be able to cover at least the basics of the types of streams that Ethica offers. So in order to do this, what you'll do is you'll do new, if you go up to the upper right, all of you should see a thing that says new study. Do you see that? Oh, no? No? Okay, guys?
Who doesn't see it? No.
Who doesn't see it? Okay.
No, I think if it wow.
Okay, Aiden, could you try to help here? Try to figure out why she doesn't see new study?
I can take care of it.
Yeah. Okay. Does everyone else see that? New study in the upper right? Okay. So I guess you didn't, or Mohammed, you didn't know that she needed the supervisory or administrative role?
I think that's the problem.
Yeah, because she didn't have to log in. Okay, so you do new study there, okay? And what you'll say here is, for the research group, Mohammed, I think what I will say is demo studies for the research group, or should we do?
I'll explain that. So maybe just
okay, sure. Okay, I'm going to say new study, and this will undertake the process of configuring a study. It goes several steps. We're going to define something about its description, overall high-level information, something about the timeline for the study. Studies can be either rolling in character, where we admit people over time, or they'll start all at one time and end all at one time, right? The streams. Now, these streams could include sensor streams, like I mentioned. Everything from GPS to accelerometer to magnetometer to pressure, temperature, humidity, factors having to do with Bluetooth for contact patterns, but also importantly involving questionnaires, survey instruments, also involving, by extension, buttons that could trigger them, and then finally configuration of certain details with that study. Okay. So do we want to say demos just as a home?
I can explain
sure,
exactly
that
what
would
the
be
reasons
great.
behind.
Sure.
So the reason I had to ask Nate for me to talk about this, because there are There are some design considerations that has gone into this. That's why it's formed this way. By no means this is the best way to do it, but as I mentioned during the launching conversation that we had, some of these we are learning it as we go through it. So far, based on understanding, this is the best way to do it. Some of them, well, we have to upgrade it, we know that, but I very much appreciate if you have any feedback about the way that we have implemented it, please let me know. We definitely can take that into account and try to update it the way that's been done. The first one, yeah. So the first one is that, as Nate probably mentioned before, we have defined two roles in our system. Either you are a participant or you are a part of a research team, which, well, sounds very clear. If you're part of a research team, you can access the data from the participants in your study. You can define a new study, start enrolling people in it, and all sorts of things. If you are a participant, we discussed it as what sort of data you have to show them. But anyway, it's clear what role you have. You're participating in the study, you just provide the data, and that's it. For some studies, you might have access to the data. For some studies, at least during the study, you don't have access to the data, and so on. We discussed it a bit. I believe we probably talk about them further later on. But let's only focus on the researcher accounts, people who are part of the research team and are supposed to access that. We assume that everyone in the research team has same access level, which already is a simplified assumption. Just we made this assumption to make our life easier, because otherwise it would be really hard to define different access levels. That's where the research group comes in play. Like, basically, what we assumed by this research group is that probably you are part of different research groups, means that you share your study with different people. So the group that you pick defines how you share that study with other people. For example, the first group shows Alberta Health Services. For example, we work with maybe 5 or 10 other people who also are involved on a research capacity on this study. That's why we pick this one. What it means is that whatever we see in this website, they see it as well, and whatever control we have over this data, they have the same level of control as well. Now, this probably is not the best way to do it. A better way would be allowing to add people, to explicitly add people to this. There are some improvements on user interface that we are working on it right now, so probably in a month from now we'll have an improved version of this. But for now, you can just, in the old version, you consider this as the old version. In the old version, you can assume that the research group basically just allows us to control the access to the data.
We don't have research group on ours.
If you do, oh yeah. So the reason that you don't have research group in yours is that you are only part of one group, and that's a demo study. So it assumes that you are only part of that group. Now, Nate's account, you see this here because he is part of I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 different groups. That's why when he tries to create a new study, it asks him that which group you want to share it with. Because you are right now part of only one group, it doesn't ask that. But well, it maybe a bit simplifies it. So, but I believe right now the study that you make by default gets shared with other people who are part of the demo studies group, which I think if you start working for some studies for yourself, you probably don't want to share it with other people who you met here, right? You probably have different group of researchers that you work with, and you probably want to share it with them, and based on that you have to create different research groups, invite people to that, and share the data with them.
So that's done by you guys, is that right? You set up new research groups, is that right?
So for now, we set up the research groups, but the reason that we really didn't add that we didn't add any visual interface to allow people to add research group, because after working with groups, we realized that this has a lot of problems. The right way to do this, which is the way that we hopefully will roll it out in a month, is to be able to explicitly add people to the study. Basically, assuming that each study has its own unique set of access, which honestly what it is in real life, right? If you are running 2 different studies, different set of people are included in the ethics application for that, right? For example, 5 or 6 people for the first study, 5 or 6 people for the second one. There are some overlap, but there are definitely differences. So we realized that there is that shortcoming there. So we realized that we probably have to make it change it in a way that every study has its own access level. The way that it will work in the design that we are working on right now is that when you define a study here, it asks you, please enter the name of people or the email address of people who you want to share the study with. And then you say, well, I want to share this study with this person, and this person. They get the same level of access. Further than that, we have to work on defining different level of access, because some people might have only read access to the data. Some people might be allowed to even basically release the modifications, but those are things that has to be taken care of down the road. But for now, you don't see this because it's just, well, it assumes that you are part of only one research group anyway. The name and description are very clear what they are. It assigns a name to the study and a description. But at the same time, it's very important because we use it everywhere in the app to advertise the study, to basically talk about the study, to refer to with the study. If you remember, Nate was showing this morning a study on foodborne illness sample study or air quality sample study or studies similar to that. Those are the names that you can see that he had assigned to the study, and those are the names that you see both in the homepage of the study, in the website, later on in the app, and so on. For example, one of the things that he mentioned was that each study will have a separate URL, if you remember, that you can go there and create your study and join the study through that URL. Now, for example, if I go to ethica.com/study equals, I think study number 73, that was one of them. Oh, sorry. It's ethica.com/study 73. Yeah. So basically, when you create a study, the system by default creates a web page for the study that people can come to for the enrollment. I'll explain how the enrollment through this web page works later on, but it creates this web page for the study. You can modify it if you want. You can assign your own background to that. You can assign different things. But the three pieces that you can change that I think is very important to brand the study. One is the background of that, which gives a different look and feel for the study. One is the title, and one is the description. Now, I think one of them that has a different background is this one. Like, for example, if I go to study like 96, well, the description is still in progress. You can see, well, you have to see it. It's designed to be seen in the mobile. And I'm going to change it so to show this in the mobile phone, how it would look like in the mobile phone. That's how it will look like on Galaxy S5. So if someone opens this page on their Galaxy S5, they see this screen, which you see it's better way to present the study. And every study automatically gets this page. Although one different thing is that if I would open this page right now on my phone, it actually would also pop up a message here and say that, oh, we have noticed you are running Android or iOS. Would you like to participate? Then pressing yes, okay, participate, or the button that is there, it actually would direct you to the website, to the Play Store or iTunes to download the app, and then create the account and directly register in this study. Now, the reason that we put this in place is to have a way for the study to basically for people to join a study that's only dedicated to that study. Now, as you see, the name appears here. Like, for example, for this project was called Health Literacy Assessment. The description also appears here. And also then later on, the name and description appears on the phone. Like, let me see if I have any study running. If I can show you. if you have, yeah, for example, the name and, well, it's too small right now, but the name description also appears on your phone, and the background also will appear on the phone. So I think these three elements are very important for multiple reasons. One is branding the study, and the other reason is just to let people know what is the study about. Like, for example, we mentioned about the confidentiality of the data, or the type of data that we collect, or the incentives that they receive, and so on.
So Mohammed, just to be clear, that image that you have where you can pick the size of the phone that you want to see it rendered on this phone or that phone, those options up at the top there,
yeah.
Yes. Those are automatically provided by your interface?
Oh, no, this is, I just wanted to show how this page will look like if you open it. This is something Chrome that allows me to
So it's a Chrome plugin
simulate,
thing.
yeah, it allows me to simulate opening the page browser. And
Got
I want to say that this is, because if you actually see it in a full screen, you say, oh, why it looks like this? It looks so odd. But that's not the intention. You're not supposed to open the page on your browser. You are supposed to open the page on your phone, and on your phone, that's how it looks.
Yeah. So one point is,
exactly, as you have it on your phone.
And it is notable the types of devices that might run this are rather different. Like this is on a tablet, not the same study, but another study. And the point is that sometimes, we saw that earlier, in fact, that sometimes the interface will look a bit different. If it's a really squeezed screen, you may not see all of the image. You may also, the plus button may not be visible. You have to go to that dot, dot, dot in the upper right. And this is something you want to be aware of if you're interacting with participants to enroll them or what have you, just to let them know their experience may look a little bit different from what is shown in your stock pictures.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So we will see when we create this study. We'll go through this. I will fill some information here, and then we'll create this study. I'll try to pass my Android screen to here and see how participants will see it if they want to participate in that study. That probably makes it. But I think right now you can see clearly that the name is used in multiple places. So is the description that's used in different places. So you can change it later. It's not that whatever you type it here is just going to be analyzed. But it's better to have something meaningful.
And the name can be, is there a restriction on spaces?
I think it's like 250 characters or
But it
something.
can include spaces.
It can include
and
anything.
special
It
characters.
can include anything.
Yeah.
I call this, for example, workshop, health behavior workshop. Yeah.
No, just to make sure that we have something that seems a little bit closer to what you're experiencing. In my browser here, on the two ends, I've actually done it in a situation with a new user. So it's not me actually who's in 13 studies or whatever. It's just me as a new user. So now I don't have that list of groups into which I can add it, because this new user, foo@bar.com, although a notable personality, that person, she's not involved in multiple research groups. So she doesn't have a choice of research groups. This is probably closer to what you see, right? There's no research group there. And this is a study description. Okay.
Okay.
Are you folks following along? Are you able to see this screen? Okay. If anyone's not, just raise your hand. Arash can also help. Okay.
Yeah. So I think, for example, I believe this presents my study pretty well. So I just press, and well, I don't want to share it with that. I probably want to share it with everyone else here. So I select this as well, and I press next.
And I'll bring you to the timeline.
Yeah. Now the time is another one. There are two things you have to select here. One is the study period, like from what time study starts, what time the study ends. The other one that you have to select is the participation duration. The difference between these two is that one of them defines like how long the whole project is supposed to last. Like for example, here I want to say I want to start today and then I want to end it. Let me say, so I want to start it today and I want to end it, I don't know, a year from now. So it's going to be August 8, 2017. So this is the duration. Now, the participation period basically says how long each participant will stay in the study. Now there are two, as I think, as we discussed it before as well. One is that everyone in the study starts at the same day and finishes at the same day, exactly. Or the other form, so basically then is that then if I pick the study period as August 8, 2016 to August 8, 2017, means that each participant will be part of the study for a full year. And everyone is supposed to register by this day and finish by this day. Another alternative is to say that I want everyone to join only for example, 14 days. So basically from here, for this whole period of 1 year, everyone can join at any time, but 14 days after, their participation will be over. The app automatically manages the registration, means that if later on you could get a link and you sign me up, for example, on, say, September 1st, it knows that my participation should finish on September 14th. While if someone else joins up on September 15th, their participation finishes on September 29th. So it basically allows you to have some sort of a staged rollout. You don't have to have all the participants registered at the same day and finish at the same day.
And if I could, just because I found it challenging, I just want to highlight something when you're using these calendar tools, and I think it actually covers many areas within the software where the same basic motif is used. Important thing to keep in mind, it can be a bit confusing, but if you, at first blush, but if you come to look at it carefully, you can actually realize how to use it well. You'll notice that at any one time, one of these boxes is highlighted in this kind of blue color. Right now you can see this one is highlighted in blue around it. You see that edge around it? What that indicates is it's looking for input about this thing. And so if I pressed August 9th, it would change this one. Now later, I may want to change this one. Maybe I've selected, August 8th is the start date here. And now, by clicking that, now it's selecting, it wants something here. And if I want to select this, now I may want to go forward and select something next summer. Let's suppose August 7th. Boom. And now it's back, letting me choose this. It's actually got the correct dates, but because it's gone back to show this date, you can no longer see the end date. The end date is there. Just be aware you're always choosing something with respect to one of either the start, shown here in blue, or the end, when that one would be in blue. And if you keep that distinction in mind, that you're always entering it with respect to one of these dates, that will help your entry, I think. Or at least it helps mine.
Yeah. So anyway, the point here is that one of the things I wanted to explain here is that the two types of enrollments we have noticed that most of the studies have is that it's either staged enrollment or like all the enrollments at the same time, basically the same synchronized enrollments for every participant. Now there might be more types of studies with respect to the timeline that we are unaware of. I can't say if anyone knows any other format, I would love to hear.
And if I could just clarify or use an additional term for something Mohammed said. He had mentioned the staged enrollment. I think the term is often used rolling enrollment. So
rolling enrollment?
It's rolling admission into the study. Mm-hmm. So the study will start on some date, but people may actually enter the study that date, the next date, 2 weeks from then, 5 months from then, and they'll remain for 3 months each. And that's kind of the distinction that Mohammed was making. So right now you have this choice: do you keep the participant duration as long as the study period, or might I have rolling admission all through this time? And I actually want the participant duration to be each participant to remain in at 60 days or something like that.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
if you've got 360 days, you keep the participation duration the same. They can still just enroll any time during that period.
But then they won't be part of the study for 360 days because either they if he checks this one,
there might be one person who enrolls on the first day, and you follow it 365 days, and then person 500 enrolls on the 350
days and only be part of the study for 5 days.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Now that was one of the things that was hard to decide. What is the right choice here? Should we even have an end date for a study? We believe there gotta be an end date for a project. You can't just have it open-ended.
Change it after you've established
You can change it. But the challenge there is that if anyone joins, like for example, if we check this here and it goes from August 8 to August 7 next year, and then someone joins New Year, they're going to be only part of the study for 7.5 months. Now, do we want them to be part of the study 7.5 months, or do we want this to just bump the end date enough to cover them for 366 days? And if we want to do that, what we're going to do with all the other people? You know, so maybe we want to keep everyone else at the same 366 days, or we want to expand their participation as well. And at some point, if you want to keep everyone at 366 days, maybe what you're looking for is really a rolling enrollment that has a participation duration of 366 days and the whole period of 2 or 3 years.
I guess it depends partly on the question as well. I mean, because of course you might be not really care so much. You might be interested in person time and incidents of whatever. In which case,
Yeah.
they're all doesn't matter if people are contributing different person time over a set period.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So the ones that we have, all the studies that we have worked so far, this model has covered all their needs.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure there gotta be more. But the problem now is that this model might seem complicated at the beginning, because keep in mind that we have one study period that is for the study, and then we have the participation period that is different for every participant. Now, if you have 1,000 participants and you have a rolling enrollment, then you have 1,000 different participation periods. And that's where I will show, maybe I can show you here, if I actually just go into demo studies here, right click on overview.
By the way, we're going to all create the same study. There's going to be half a dozen new studies.
There's going to be half a dozen new studies using
Yes,
demos.
exactly.
Yeah. And in fact, what I would suggest is, I should have said it earlier, but for the study name, you can actually go back and do previous. Why don't you put at the end of the study name your login, like ZZZ101, or for those who have NSIDs.
Or even if not, but
just to
for-
keep them separate names. Because
it's-
they may clash, the names?
No, I
Okay.
doubt that. Well, it's unlikely for two people pick a name that exactly
Well,
is
it's
the
just
same.
if they use exactly mine, use
Don't
that.
use exactly his. So
Yeah. Yeah, but you could put your NSID at the end, or the login that you received, ZZZ101 or
Yeah.
ZZZ, 127. You could put it at the end, and then it will be unique. But
and here is exactly where you can see that when it says a study period, this study period was defined from September 30th, 2015 to December 31st, 2016. I can change it right now. I can go and I want to edit. I say I want to edit it, and I say, well, I don't want to be December 16th. I want to be, for example, April 17th, April 2017, and I can save it, and it just saves it. Now I'm just going to cancel it for now. But then for every participant, you can see that they have their own participation period. Like for example, for user 1, this joined on September 30th, August 8th, and based on that, it cuts all of theirs on December 31st, though. Because that's the date that we chose to be the end date for
of the
study.
entire time.
Yeah. So now if here we chose...
So is it fair to say that if you choose a participant duration that is such that when they enroll, that participant duration will fall before the end of the study, then they'll get that full participant duration. It's just if that falls beyond, beyond the end of the study, then it's truncated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we were doing is that for some studies we thought that's going to be done in 6 months, and we thought that everyone going to be in the study for two months only. But after 3 months, we realized that after 3.5, 4 months, we realized no, we are still enrolling participants, and now everyone joins the study is going to be shorter than 2 months that we intended for. That's why we had to come here, change the study period from 6 months to a year, add another 6 months, and keep enrolling people. And as long as we have that in control, it works without any problem. But then we defined the study period here for this study to be 459 days, and then the app takes care of, so everyone that registers, it knows that, well, the app knows that it has to collect the data that you mentioned later on in the study design for 459 days. So I hope this makes it a bit clear what these two are. I have described them with just 2 lines of text each, but it probably needs a bit more description. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just set it to be 14 days, and I press next. Yeah. So the next one is adding the streams. Now, to say that before I go deep into this, is that one of the things we knew we have to do is that the system should allow people to use the phone to run different tasks. Participants should be able to run different tasks or different whatever the components of the different steps of the study as part of their participation. Now I think there are 3 in general. You can either, the phones can collect data automatically, like automatically in the background, like whether it's sensor data, survey responses that are automatically issued, and so on. Or you can deliver some interventions in the form of like showing them some multimedia videos and so on, and ask their opinions, see how those interventions help. There are a lot of studies that use the interventions. Or the third one is to have some controlled tasks. Like, for example, you can define a task and ask participant that please walk for 5 minutes, and then start to intensely record data during that 5 minutes. These are, I think, these are the only elements that you can deliver through the phones, right? So far, we are only supporting the first one, automatically collecting the data. We are not still supporting delivering any sort of interventions through this, unless you can phrase it as a survey. Otherwise, in the form of interventions, not yet. And we are not able to support the controlled tasks. Like, we can't say that ask participant that keep the phone in your hand, walk for 5 minutes, and we measure sensor data. Or we can't ask them that continuously tap left and right as the continuous performance task that they do for ADHD syndrome. So these are the things that we hope we can add soon. But for now, we only can collect automatically the data that we can collect potentially from the phones.
But you can have questions that are primed to be pushed out when you, like, based on like your location. You know, if you're going into a shop, it says, oh, remember, it's,
Oh yes. But as I said, like, yeah, those are the questionnaires. So if you can, even for the interventions, if you can rephrase it as a even for interventions, if you can rephrase it as a questionnaire, like, for example, saying that please watch the following 5-minute video and then let us know what you're thinking, right?
And it should be noted that when we talk about questionnaires, they're actually fairly flexible in the sense that they can include informational questions, which just make a statement, and they can actually, I think, they can include a bunch of constructs we'll talk about.
Yes, exactly. We will get into the survey. The survey is quite flexible, so we can fairly say that the survey covers all the needs that a survey system should have. But still, I'm sure we're all aware of that an intervention system requires more features that are not necessarily covered by a survey system. That are, maybe you just plan to show some sort of multimedia and ask nothing, like say that this is, for example, your status right now. Like, for example, you walked 2,000 steps today, and then keep telling them this, and then in the background measure, see whether their behavior changes or not.
Like, or if you wanted to push them a video giving, a pep talk on, just a little bit more, and you'll probably get over the worst.
Yeah, there are a lot of overlaps there.
Yeah,
there's a lot of overlaps there. I agree, but there are differences in their presentation as well. Yeah, I think the major difference from the survey versus the intervention comes through the way that you present it. While survey, you're asking questions. That's how you present it. While intervention is you're just letting them know about something, and then measure whether that made a difference in their behavior or not. Otherwise, in the way that you present it, is the elements is the same. It's the text, video, images, and so on. It's multimedia.
So an example like that is for this study that's been proposed, where a person has hit their target for their steps and is at the football game at the stadium, and this information gets relayed to project coordinators who then arrange for the person to get congratulated on the big screen, right?
Right.
John Smith has hit right. It's just this health heroes thing. Right?
Yes, exactly. A health heroes.
Yeah.
They're actively trying to.
And the crowd goes wild.
Yeah. Actively trying to get sports clubs as the incentive.
Yes.
Engage with their sporting clubs, the incentive for them to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So something like that. There can be triggered surveys triggered by context. There can also be from the data that's collected that might allow, processing to go on, which could then alert the administrator on the analysis side. This would be outside the Ethica website. But in principle, there could be analysis that goes on that says, oh, this person in the past 21 days has achieved this many steps. They would qualify for this. But that would be outside. That analysis would be outside the website here. It would be something which would go on with the data that's secured by the phones and uploaded to the servers, but to actually do that analysis would be the sort of task that a Winchell or a Rifat or a Jin might be, the sort of person that would undertake that sort of analysis.
Yeah, and some of these becomes very specialized. Like if you there are a lot you can do with gamification that potentially can increase the compliance. But what level of those changes can be used by all research projects, but majority of the research projects, and what percentage are fairly local is another question. The purpose of this system is to have something, is to have all the elements that we can fairly say it's common between all the research projects, regardless of where they run. So the goal here is to have a system that we can simply deploy a research project on phones as easily as possible. But as I think, as we discussed, well, we were talking about it over lunch, a lot of these studies, especially if they are large-scale studies, they can benefit from some local contextual information that might not be very helpful to even another province or state, but it's very relevant to their own context, and when you add them, it can be very helpful. And those make sense to just use this tool as a proof of concept to see and to find like how you have to calibrate your parameters, and then start to build on top of that something that is very much customized to the population that you're targeting. And that's the approach that we are taking right now with, in Alberta, because there are elements there that resonates with the population there a lot more. And we can then when we branch this project, we can really do things that are more relevant to their work.
You can brand it. You can make it very, very custom.
Yeah, we discussed that. Yeah.
Send intervention sort of messaging or what have you.
So for now, like the first one, as we talked about, is collecting any sort of data. Now, sources of data can be anything. Like it can be just all these sort of sensors that we can see it here, or one of these is also survey responses. You can see the second last one is survey responses. Now, survey responses is a fairly complicated one. We will go through that and see, like, when you select, you basically say you want to collect survey responses, how you can define the surveys, how you can say what is the context under which the survey has to be triggered, and what questions should be asked, and so on. But there are other sensors as well, like accelerometer, noise, app usage, battery. Some of them, Nate talked very high level about them. I will talk about these sensors and what they mean probably after this demo, so they make a bit more sense. But for now, you can probably guess that you can select the type of sensor that you want to collect, the type of source of data, I should better call it, because not all of them come from sensors. So you select, for example, you want to collect accelerometer, or you want to collect ambient temperature, or you want to collect, for example, GPS data, or for example, a screen state. And it also shows in like 1 or 2 lines what this sensor means, what it is. It allows you to choose whether you want to collect this data for all the study participation period from each participant, or a subset of those days. Like, for example, you can say that I do want to collect accelerometry data, but only 5 days after they joined until like 5 days before. It's been needed for some projects, but it gives you the opportunity to select a window in that time. Like, do we have a marker here?
I unfortunately was looking for one. I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
see one
So anyway, think about the study period that we have. We can either choose to collect the data for that whole duration, or any subset of that, time. This gives us this option. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
So, any questions about the?
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Thanks a ton.
Just make sure that we can hear it.
Yeah.
So basically, we talked about this. Like, if I want to show this, if this is a timeline for the study, this is the whole, like for example, say from August 2016 to August 2017. This actually smells good. August 17. Say, for example, the whole study period, it takes 1 year. But then we set the participation time to be 2 weeks. So anyone who joins in, say, September 1st, they finish on September 14th. Now, for every data stream individually, we can either choose to collect the data for that whole period or for a subset of that. For example, we can say that we only need the GPS data to be collected for the last week. So we do, for the first week of this, we don't want GPS, while for the second week, we want to collect GPS. So that's how we can do. We can either check to say at all times during the study period collect this data, or only collect this data 0 days after. So basically start from 7 days after the start to 0 days before the end. This basically means the second week.
It's notable because there are some studies where, not uncommonly, in fact, from my experience, there's interest in having intense periods of data collection. And you might warn the participants, during this second week, you'll be have this extra information collected, including a bunch of extra surveys, for example.
Yes.
Or it might be during the second week, your browsing behavior will be monitored, or your movement, and those would be the sort of things which could be collected, could be identified from here, the browsing behavior or GPS or what have you, and could be enabled for that defined portion.
Yeah. So maybe some of these settings might seem unclear that how they can be applied, but as long as you know how they work, or then if the need comes up, we have this flexibility to do these modifications. Yeah. And the last one is whether a stream is mandatory, a source of data is mandatory or not. This, if a source of data is marked as optional, the app gives participants an option to opt out from them. You might run a study that you ask people to submit their GPS data, and they might say, well, I don't want to be tracked via GPS. I do want to join, and I am okay with submitting all the survey responses and so on, but I don't want to submit my GPS. And if you think you can live with that, if you think even enrolling participants but without collecting their GPS data is an acceptable choice, you can mark this as an optional. Basically, it's not as a non-mandatory stream, a source of data, and then through the app they will receive an interface that allows them to opt out from this data. And you can now, for example, I think we have selected all of these. I can press add, and it just adds here that, for example, I've selected accelerometer. That starts 7 days after they join the study, and it goes all the way to the end. So it starts 7 days after start of the participation period, and this is optional.
Do you have a sense of the sort of proportion of opt-out if they're given the option for that, based on the studies?
No, for two reasons. Because not many people have tried it so far. Not many studies have tried it. Most of the studies, when they pick a source of data, they decide to go with that as a mandatory option. And the second is that for the one study that actually did try this, there were not as many people who used this. Maybe, now there are some hypotheses. We're trying to figure out whether the way that we were presenting it wasn't very clear. Maybe if we were we were educating people that yes, if you want to opt out, you can choose this option. They would use it more, but there hasn't been as many people participants who use this feature so far.
I have a question. Have you ever considered monitoring free space on the phones?
That's an
Free-
interesting.
Because I've had, in my study, I've had 2 or 3 phones crash.
Right, because they run out of space.
Yeah.
That's a
idea.
the study never. Okay, so the study never crashes because of the lack of space. What happens actually is that the study cannot record the data, and it just constantly says, there's no disk space left for me to write anything. We use a very modest amount of data compared to a lot of other apps, that a modest amount of space, I should say, compared to other apps. But
Right, it's the lab version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but it wasn't even like IAPI that got full.
Yeah.
It was all the other apps on the phone.
That's what I wanted to say.
Space, and then
But that's a serious issue because
Yeah.
the study, and I think depending on the demographic we are targeting, we really need to take this into account as a serious item, to the level that I think one of the 3 very important notes that we put together in a pamphlet we prepared for one of the studies was a disk space, that you are not eligible to join if you don't have 300 megabytes of disk space on your phone. Now, phones are shipped with a minimum of 2 GB of space. And when I'm saying 2 GB, actually the phones that you probably see during in everyday basis they are shipped with 8 GB. 2 GB are very, very low-end Android phones that they are sold unlocked for $70. So they're actually very, very cheap, and you will see surprisingly a lot of them when you go with low SES population. And those phones, they have multiple challenges. One is that they are very, very limited in resources. And so your app, though even very small, still cannot, there's not going to be enough resources in the system for your app. And some of them have to uninstall some of their apps to be able to install one more. And uninstalling apps potentially can be a behavior change already if you are looking into that. If you're looking for the patterns of social interaction, online social interaction, and for installing your app, they have to install Facebook, you already lose half of it. So that's probably not the way that you want to go. The approach...
What did you say, sorry, I'm just curious, because
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the phones that we gave our participants. So what did you say is your minimum requirement that you guys have for your
The minimum requirements that we need is 100 megabytes. Now,
is that the processing RAM or just?
no, that's just any storage that we can write down. If the space that we need to store is 20 megabytes, we need 80 megabytes just to buffer the data if the person is not connected to the internet, so we can upload it later on.
Right, yeah.
That's 100 megabytes that we need minimum. Now, depending on what you choose, like for example, if I go here and say that I want to monitor
Audio?
no, the browsing history.
Oh, yeah.
The browsing history, I can say I want to monitor this one. Now, browsing history works only through Firefox. Means that you have to install Firefox. Firefox by itself requires 100 megabytes of storage. So that adds on top of that, and it needs 100 megabytes of storage to operate. So that adds to 300.
Yeah, and just to be clear, that's only if you've opted for that
For that stream, yeah.
For that stream,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't need this source of data,
Right.
you don't have to be worried about it. But, and to be clear, if you actually right now, I think, go to any cell phone carrier and try to get a phone, you can't even find any phone with less than 8 GB of memory. All of them are shipped with 8 gigabytes. And so it means that usually they have 6 gigabytes of memory, so mostly they have enough space to install it.
These ones had 12 and I had 2 phones that created IFE crashes.
Yeah.
Because of the space issue.
Yeah.
Do you know how much space they had originally?
We gave them phones,
Mhm.
so they were all identical, 12 gigs.
Yeah, so 12 gigabytes of data, if they have 12 gigabytes of storage, and I mentioned we only need 100 megabytes, right?
Yeah.
Android operating system itself uses 1.5 gigabytes.
Right.
That roughly say it's 2 gigabytes. There's 10 gigabytes left to use, right? We depending on the type of data that you collect, we accumulate around 1 gigabytes of data per month if it's not uploaded. So if you go offline without any internet connectivity for a whole month, the phone buffers around 800 megabytes of data.
So
and if
no
you keep,
Wi-Fi, no cell data. If you're offline
for a month.
And so would that include video and photos?
That includes answering 3 surveys per day. That includes an image each survey.
But
Now,
no audio.
no, you can add audio as well, or instead of an image, have an audio, but just one media attached to that. Now, if you have more media, but 3 surveys already is quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
And if you add, like if you change, actually the number is actually 800 megabytes, but we'll roughly say 1 gigabyte. So if you have more media, you have to accommodate for that. But still, 1 month is a long period of time.
Yeah.
Now, that allows you to go for 10 months without the app crashing. The reason that this happens is usually...
That's if people are not loading it up with other
That's what I want to say.
media.
The reason that it might be crashing is that there might be a lot of other files already using that 10 gigabytes of storage, and you already have very little. And then what Ethica does is that it sends an error report to the server saying that this particular participant cannot record any data because their disk space is full.
But I guess that would only work if they were uploading. Like if they hadn't uploaded, then you wouldn't get that error. Right?
Yeah, well, we get the error if there's no disk space.
No.
Now, if they're not connected,
But she's saying, if they're not connected.
if they're not connected, and then we don't get the error either. But then you see it elsewhere. You
Then,
see it.
like my participants saw the error on the screen, being like my screen gave me a red error. So then we had to figure out what the error was and the disk space. But if they were uploading on a regular basis and it was full just with the apps, you would have seen an error on your website and you would have been able to go to that participant.
We can talk about the details of that, but different Android phones, well, one challenge that you have with Android, unlike iOS, is that iPhone, there's only one iPhone and one company produces it. Android, the way that Android works is that Android just, Google introduces the standards and say, this is the stock Android that we suggest you to release it. Then there are 10,800 different Android phones. It actually gives you the statistics when you submit an application to the store. There are 10,800 different Android phones, not phones, tablets, and so on, produced by different companies. Now, companies, including Samsung, HTC, and so on, they get this version of Android and then modify it for their own taste. And you probably have seen, if you have worked with Android, that Samsung Android is different than HTC Android, is different than, for example, Huawei Android, and so on.
Huawei.
The reason, so one of the things that they do is that they tweak with the way that app works. Stock Android, the one that Google offers, is that if an app doesn't have enough storage, it fails to write something to disk. So you can't store anything, you can run still, but you can't write anything to disk, and there's no error shown to user. Now, if a participant sees an error shown on their screen, either that error is not relevant to disk storage, or that error is because something that company added there. So the way that, and we haven't seen, like our app so far is run on 120 different Android phones, and we haven't seen that screen to be shown in that 120 different brands.
In other words,
we have seen a lot of different.
It has run empirically. In other words, in our studies, there's been 100 different types of phones.
Yes, 120 different types of phones.
Yeah.
We have seen a lot of different odd situations with these phones, but this hasn't been one of them. So this hasn't been one of them yet. Now, the problem of the storage is something that we have to keep an eye on, but we only have noticed that generally with low SES population. I doubt if with the high-end phones it's something that you will see very often.
Yeah, and it's a special vulnerability, but it comes back to your question, which I thought was a very good one. Could we monitor as a stream disk space? Just like one of the streams there that is monitored is battery, for example.
Yeah.
We do monitor the battery resources remaining. Could you monitor disk space remaining on the phone. And I think in principle, probably.
It's possible, but the thing is that most of the people who are using this platform, our assumption is that they don't have the expertise to know what is even a required disk space. Like quite a few of these teams that we work with are not familiar with these concepts enough to be able to manage this. That's why we do our best to manage these things in the background and not involve them as long as possible.
No, totally. Like I understand that pieces of it. I'm just trying to figure out how, in future moving forward, how you can prevent that error from having to happen and having to meet with your participants.
And one important thing that we tried to emphasize earlier, I don't know if you remember when I first was walking you through kind of tours of some of those sample studies, there was an overview page where you could see information on participants and the last time they uploaded data and so on.
Yeah, no, I've been getting that file, so I know.
Exactly, and my point is that if you were tracking disk space, just like tracking battery, you might be able to better explain why a person has not uploaded data recently, right? It might be another explanatory variable to sort of say, oh, this person hasn't reported back data in 2 weeks. I wonder what's going on there. And you look at their battery, and it seems to be fine, their battery life, but then you look at their disk space, and you see that it went down to almost nothing. And you say, oh, okay. Or this last scene on, can provide you a clue that they didn't connect recently.
Yeah, what I want to say is that one thing is that I think last scene probably here is a better indicator. The team that I mentioned, we faced with a lot of trouble with respect to disk space. The problems appeared when the participants were joining. So they wanted to join, but they wanted to install the app, and they didn't have enough disk space. And then when they did free up enough disk space, or we provided them with phones, because some of them there was no way to run the app on their low resource phone, so we actually had to purchase some phone and give it to them. When we did that, then they could install it. We never ran into a problem with
Firefox too.
That was with Firefox. So we suggested them that you have to have 500 megabytes of disk space free to be able to join. We never faced the problem of disk space afterwards, because we actually did create a protocol for a different reason, that if a participant is not seen for 7 days, they have to be contacted. So if a participant goes offline for like 7 days and they don't upload anything, we have to contact them and see what's happening. So that guarantees that they don't buffer or store data on their phone for more than 7 days. And that's a very good, like the protocol that they designed was a very detailed protocol, and I think was a very good thing, because you also lose the chance of, you also have the chance of losing the data if the participant goes for a long period and not uploading them. Because if I go with 1 month and not uploading the data to the server, and anything happens to my phone, all my data for the past month is gone. And we see it very often with people tampering with the phone, like with the app, uninstalling it, reinstalling it, the data is gone. Because when you uninstall, it wipes out everything for that app. And that data that's been buffered for a month is already been deleted.
Or maybe they switched phones.
They switched phones
on a new phone, and they left that one 3 weeks ago. They put it down, and we don't know that until we check, 3 weeks later, and then we find out.
I was one of those who believed that, these problems happen really occasionally, really rarely, but turned out, no, actually it happens very often. Out of six first participants we had, one of them had to switch phones 3 times, and the other one dropped his first phone in a river somewhere. I don't know how that can happen.
This is all low SES.
Yeah, and your problems really magnify there. So that's why we actually had to be this whole protocol was something that later on we worked on as we were working on the study. And the reason was that we noticed we have so many problems that if the participant goes without uploading the data for 3 to 7 days, it's very unlikely we get data from them. They definitely do something so we lose the data. Now, in theory, if for example, if I collect data on my phone and leave it here offline without internet connection, here without touching it for 2 months, it just stores the data. But that's not going to happen in practice. In practice, people are using their phone, doing things with their phone, and they're definitely going to do something to delete the data. That's why I think one thing to make sure is to definitely contact people who have not uploaded data for more than 7 days, And when you do that, and they originally have given you enough, like 500 megabytes of disk space, you're never going to reach that level of a disk storage problem.
So how do you do that usually? Usually call them up?
We message them well, the protocol that we designed with the team is that you message them one at the third day. And then you call them on 7th day, and then every day you call them and message them until you get a hold of them. Yeah. And then there's a text written for every conversation, and there's.
That was my job.
Yeah, I know that.
Yep, pretty much.
So how often did they run out of this space? So you said you
I
had
had 2 people that, the first person phoned me who said, Epi came up with an error on the app. He phoned, I said, okay, come down. I had actually the computer science guy, I don't really know what it was. He came in and he looked and he'd been playing a game. And the game had stored a whole bunch of data on the phone. So the phone, like, Epi couldn't do what it needed to do. So then we showed him how to do that. And then the other person, I went for another reason to give her a gift card, and she's like, oh, my phone's giving me an error, and I wasn't exactly sure what was going on because it said it still had, I think, 2 gigs of free memory, but I was still getting the error. So what I did is I just deleted a bunch of apps. She just downloaded Pokemon Go. So I deleted that one and then reinstalled it and it worked. So I don't know if it was like, I just needed to reinstall the app. I don't know if it was what the issue was, because I don't know how to read the error codes, right? Like, I'm not.
Like, for example, we don't have any dialogue in our app showing an error code for disk space.
Yeah, that was the lab. I think it was lab IEPI. That was
Yeah,
with James.
It's a lab.
That was the lab
James,
version of
it's a lab
IEPI. So that was the version 2. This is generation 3.
Yeah.
That was generation
so
2.
It
Yeah.
gives a red
Yeah.
on IEPI.
I know that screen. Yeah.
A whole bunch of gibberish that I don't know what it means, and I'm like,
Yeah, that's the thing.
it.
Now, now the second generation that Nate was talking about, that's a lot more rough to work with,
Oh,
and
it's beautiful in comparison.
and even this, we have the reason that we don't include disk space is that
That is Mohammed.
people who work with these systems and people who have, like we have in different projects that are taking care of the participants, they are usually not technical people. And it's very hard to because like especially with phones, there are a lot of different terminologies. Like you have internal disk space, you have external disk space, you have RAM, and each of them they have to be. And these are the terminologies that smartphones expect their users to know about. And most of our study staff are not familiar with this.
Right.
That's why we try to even simplify it and say, you know what, make sure that they don't go unseen for more than this period of time, because if this happens, then you probably will not. There's tons of problem they might run into, and you will not get the data out of them at the end.
Like you, we've only lost 3 people's data for chunks of time.
Yeah, and like we have.
Good. That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have tried to simplify it. Actually, like one of the emails I've been receiving today, like 5 of them has been like about this, that we have tried to simplify it a lot. Like for example, if the study is running, there is a blue puzzle piece shown on the corner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in our instruction, we call people and say, do you see a blue puzzle piece on the corner? And they say, yes. And say, are you connected to the Wi-Fi? They say, yes.
Yeah.
So are you sure you're seeing the blue puzzle piece? They say, oh no, I'm not seeing it. Like,
Yeah.
so can you tap on the app once? And so you really have to go to the basics to make sure that they still can follow.
Yeah.
So depending on the population, and and if you work with university students, that's usually a lot easier. You don't have to,
Yeah.
But with general public, you have to have this hotline
Yeah.
No, I
for
was just
technical.
curious, 'cause
Yeah.
that was an issue that
Yeah.
came up.
And this points to a lot of these issues we'll be revisiting in coming days as we
Yeah.
discuss issues of study design and operation. And one of them is the fact that we are working here on the cutting edge of interdisciplinary work, where you have study design staff who are not necessarily familiar with things, and they're working alongside computer geeks who are not familiar with the human theater and sort of the language there, the concerns, and really there's a lot to be learned there about that interaction as well, and how to work together as a seamless group to effectively deal with the problems. And I think Mohammed has a lot of experience that's built up there, and for me working in the health area for 20 or so years, it's really helped give some insights to how do you mesh those groups, how do you mesh the different understandings. But it remains a big sort of point of learning, particularly in this mobile space.
Yeah. So this is the so basically you select all the streams that you want, including for example surveys, which is mandatory and starts with all time ad, and similarly, like for example, we can go even with Wi-Fi data. I'll explain after, as soon as we create the study, I will go through the items and say what each of these streams mean. Like when we talk about, for example, gravity versus gyroscope, why we need gyroscope, why we need gravity, what sort of information these data provide, and how we can use it. And so, for example, I'm happy with this 4, and I press next.
Right, and the point is which you pick will depend a lot what insights you're trying to pick up. The specifics of what health behaviors, health exposures, context you are trying to elicit. If you want to understand if important to your research goals is to understand if someone is in a vehicle or not, because you're trying to understand physical activity and you want to factor out cases where they are, distinguish cases where they're engaged in highly vigorous biking versus vehicular use, you would want to use GPS speed and accelerometry as a big piece. If you're interested in contact patterns and risk of communication of illness or of norms, Bluetooth may be of interest to you. And we'll come back to some of the trade-offs there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the last piece is just some final configuration. One is that here you pick the study background. Like this is the abstract background that by default we add if you just want to go with the abstract background. Or alternatively, let me see how this works. I think this browser stopped working. How you?
Sorry?
So I don't know. For some reason, it's kind of like.
Oh.
But it mouse doesn't interact here.
Okay. So here. Let's just switch over to
yours.
To mine. Yeah. Mumble. So how do we get out of camera controls? Advanced routing. Okay. So let's switch projector over to
HDMI.
mine here.
Yeah. Okay, so probably you should be able to just press
create study.
No, just go down here. So this one here you can pick a background. The background we have seen where it's used. It's used basically anywhere in the app. This is the background we use. We have I think a few like we saw this one. Sorry, just can I? We saw this background. We have this one, this background that we that we saw it before. You can it looks a lot better. We saw how it looks in the phone. So or other backgrounds that gives a theme or gives a special brand to the study. You can pick that background here. If you can, you go to the Ethica website.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you go up a bit?
Yeah.
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 And the very first one is a very special special item. Oh, actually I did.
Is it doing it again?
No, well, forget it. Forget mine. And the very first one is called share attributes. It's again used for some of the studies that we run that they, it has a long story behind it, but I'll try to explain in the simple way possible. What this one is used for is that usually in the studies we also define different groups. Like for example, we say we either define social groups or we just define as different attributes to groups. Like these people are.
You get Merlin.
We say these people are patients, these people are nurses, and then we want to monitor their interaction. Then we try, based on that data, we try to capture their interactions. Checking this allows some information to be shared. Now, I think this is probably just enough for now about this, but I'll try to explain it later a bit more. But for now, let's skip this one. And that's pretty much it. Now, if you press create study, we should be able to.
I'll create a study here, okay? So that takes all the information that has been specified and has now created the study. And there, over on the left-hand side, we have a diploma cap, and you can see Bootcamp 2016 test study creation. And you'll notice that these characteristics here match the characteristics of the study, but as Mohammed noted, you have the option of editing them.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry? Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, so study creation. We identified the goals, the description, the name, the sort of mechanism for study enrollment, study time frame, and participant time frame. We identified the streams, and we chose some characteristics like the picture to be used. But again, that picture is the one that you see on the phone, right? Okay, so you've just seen the mechanics of how you do this, and you've been explained some of the basics. What I'd like to do now, and Mohammed will be giving a lot of this presentation, but I want to make some opening remarks,
Sure.
is to talk about the implications of some of these streams, because we kind of glossed over that. There are all these choices for streams, and we happened to choose 4 of them, but those weren't particularly privileged, and we noted that those are quite specific to our research goals, the types of insights, the types of health behavior and health contexts and exposures we're trying to gather in the study. So we're going to talk a little bit about the type of information recorded by Ethica Health, and